Kelly, thank you so much for meeting with me or chatting with me. You're a data scientist, a lifelong learner, and author of the new book called A Friendly Guide to Data Science, which is how we originally met. You interviewed me for your book, which was super fun. And your book walks readers through the essential topics, what data analysis involves, what skills are useful, how terms like data analytics and machine learning connect without getting too technical too fast. And it's perfect for data science 101 classes, students exploring new skills, professionals navigating data-driven decisions, or someone considering a career change. And it will help readers build the confidence needed to succeed, just as AI and data become increasingly central to everyday life. So a little bit more about you. You have a BA in mathematical sciences, an MS in speech and language processing, an MS in information systems, among other degrees and certificates, and you're currently in the Doctor of Technology program at Purdue University. And you've worked in many different industries. It's given you a wide range of domain knowledge, including education, bioinformatics, microfinancing, B2B tech, and retail. So welcome. I'm very excited to chat with you.
Yeah, thanks for
Um,
having me. Should be fun.
yeah, for sure. So just to get it kicked off, you are a self-proclaimed data nerd, as many of us are. And, from the first time you saw a spreadsheet, which I can certainly relate to, I like to say that spreadsheets are the gateway to analytics and data science. But when did you realize that this isn't just something that was interesting to you, that this is what you wanted your career to be?
Yeah, so I did a little bit of programming when I was a very young kid through a magazine called 321 Contact, if anybody's old enough to remember that. They had basic code in the back, and so I got a chance to go sort of play with that at my dad's job. We didn't have a computer yet, and I mean, nobody did at that point except offices. And so I kind of like thought that was fun, but I never took any of that seriously. I did some programming in high school. My teacher told me I was really good at it, but I just didn't even think it was real, like something to pursue. So my data interest was kind of like that. I was just like, I was like when I would exercise, I would track my data and that was fun. I have a spreadsheet and I had like a whole Django system that gave me data about the books I read, all that stuff. But it was kind of just like, well, why don't I try to do something real with this? And I found out about computational linguistics when I was studying abroad. And I kind of got into that through studying Scottish Gaelic and sociolinguistics. And so I got on that program, and that's where I realized you could really do applied things with all these interests. I learned some machine learning. It was mostly NLP, but we kind of saw the wider view as well. And I ended up getting a software engineering job. And from there, it was mostly NLP related programming. And it was just a lot of fun. And then, and then I got the wonderful 2009 layoff. So that's one of the reasons I've been in a few different or different industries because at the time nobody did Python, so finding a Python job was really difficult in 2009, and so that's kind of how I ended up in bioinformatics, and then I did some web programming, and then I ended up back in or not back, but I ended up in Seattle, where I finally got back into data science. We were doing some work on analyzing server performance for the company I was in. Even though I was a software engineer, that was the work. And so that's when I took the University of Washington data science certificate program to kind of like refresh what I did know and sort of get a current picture. And then I was like, yeah, definitely I want to do this. This is fun to work on real problems, and using data to do so is like more than looking at things just from how you feel. Just seemed
Mhm.
pretty cool. And so then I eventually ended up in a data science role after starting that path.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. And I feel like when it comes to careers, like there's the folks who are like they have their whole vision, their whole plan, like this is the path I'm going to follow, this is what I'm going to do. And then there's the people who are like, well, I like doing this right now. I'm going to do this right now until I can't do that anymore. And then it's like, well, along the way, I picked up this other thing. And so then I'm going to kind of incorporate that. And oh, but I need to learn this other skill to do it. And then your career just kind of takes this weird path. I feel like mine has kind of followed that where I'm like, at the beginning, I'm like, maybe I'll do this. And I'm like, no, and I feel like in the second camp, it's like, it's just more interesting. Like you come up
Yeah.
with such a unique, interesting path, which like eventually you find yourself like qualified for these really unique unicorn
Mhm.
opportunities. And you've kind of carved out like the perfect little niche for you. And I don't
Yeah.
know, it can be a bear to get there, but it like you just
It
have,
is.
I think, Yeah,
I think that people who have that kind of path just have a different perspective than people who've just gone, like one of my
right.
mentors actually, statistics undergrad, statistics masters, another statistics masters, became a statistician, eventually turned into a data scientist. And it's like, she's great. I've learned a ton from her, but I often know like aspects of things that she's never even considered
Mhm.
just because I've done so many other things. And so
Exactly.
it's all valuable. It's just like I think it does qualify you for different things. And I think depending on what your background is can help you kind of determine where to go. Like, are you going to try to use your wide range of knowledge? Or are you going to try to focus on something super specific? And
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, I also think then when the economy does take another unpredictable turn, you're kind of like, well, you know what? I'm qualified for a whole host of different things. And maybe I'm not an expert at all of those things, but I do have various backup plans.
yeah.
Anyway, but you know, you mentioned a mentor, and that was one of my next questions. In your acknowledgments, you mentioned and thank the handful of mentors and people you've learned from while growing as a data scientist. And so I love mentoring, and being mentored. And so I'm curious, how have mentors helped you as a data scientist?
Yeah, the first one I really had was kind of almost I mean, it wasn't an official mentor, but he was very conscious of mentoring me, and he would like give me advice, and and that was all really helpful. But I changed companies, and then my other mentors have just been colleagues that I've just kind of watched. I've admired their work and their achievements, and so I've just kind of watched them, and I've asked them questions. Can you explain why you did X? And a lot of it you can see why X worked, but sometimes you don't, and so you can ask and that can be really valuable. So I feel like sometimes people are looking for like a mentor on paper, someone who's official through a mentoring program. You can learn from anybody. And if you're easy to work with, they're going to be most of them will be happy to answer your questions and maybe even kind of take you under their wing just by accident. So
Hmm. Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
but learning from other people is like really the only way to learn
Yeah.
almost any industry job. I mean,
Yeah.
not like college.
Yeah, but no, I agree with that with mentoring. Like I have done some like official, like proper mentorship programs, and they've been great. But I've also just the people you talk to and like your coworkers and like people you meet at networking events or chat with on LinkedIn, that's still mentorship. And you can still get a lot out of that without officially being like, will you be my mentor? Um, so yeah, I think people kind of overlook that that's a form of mentorship as well. So next question, like change gears a little bit. Anyway, so it's been over a decade since the Harvard Business Review came out with their article that said, data science is the sexiest job of the 21st century. They had a follow-up in 2022, basically saying like, yep, still is. And it's projected to grow faster than any other job. But since then, since obviously 2012 and 2022, the job market's changed a lot. And like generative AI has practically become, a household term. Even like last night, I was out to dinner with my parents and I was like talking to them. I'm like, you know what ChatGPT is, right? They're like, oh yeah. And they're like 75. And of course, there's been all this concern of jobs being replaced or in less demand due to AI. So, in your perspective, do you think that, data science is still the sexiest job? Has this book changed your perspective at all, or the job market? And also, do you think like AI is the sexiest job, or I don't know, just threw out a lot of topics at you. What do you think?
Yeah, so I do actually think that data science is sort of out of the limelight now, but
Mhm.
I think that's not right. I mean, I think it still is fundamentally as important and as sexy. I think people are very distracted by Gen AI.
Mhm.
They think it can do way more than it can actually do. And I think there are job losses because of it. I think that a lot of companies are thinking they can replace their more junior employees with AI, and they probably can, but they're going to run out of senior employees because you don't get to be a senior level if you don't have experience as a junior level first. So I think it's a very short-sighted thing, but I also think I think that people will notice that it's not the panacea that like
Mhm.
I think it is. I think that eventually they will notice that it's not going to ever do anything truly novel because all it is doing is mashups basically of what it's seen before. And so I'm kind of like as a writer, I don't
Mhm.
like it. And so it took me a while to start playing with it,
Mhm.
but it's really amazing at certain types of
Mhm.
queries that you struggle with Google. So it's not
Mhm.
useless, but
Mhm.
it's not the answer to everything either. And so I think right now, probably the sexiest field to be in is AI itself, but I think eventually we'll come back to data science more in industry basically as being more valuable.
Mhm.
So at least for like decision making. So
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. No additional comments. Okay, so let's get more into your book, A Friendly Guide to Data Science, which I love the name. So what sparked the idea? Did you feel like there was something missing in the way data science is usually taught that made you want to write this book?
so the whole trajectory kind of is like my career, kind of random. I was writing fiction. I liked it. I kind of got interested in picture books. I thought of writing a picture book about a somewhat technical topic. Realized I would have to do a lot of research. Thought it would be more interesting to do as like for older readers. And then I was like, why am I looking at this topic, which actually was domestication, like of animals. I find it interesting. And then I was like, why don't I do this about data science? And I was like, okay, so obviously that's not a picture book. That's not, even for middle grade, it's not really appropriate. But for YA, I mean, a lot of teenagers might like digging in. I mean, they are exploring programming, but maybe they could kind of explore a specific area. And then I started developing the idea, and I realized there's nothing for college level
Mm,
readers either. And all the books that are out there about data science are teach through industry experience. Like people who have industry experience will be reading these books. The examples come from business world. They're not that interesting for someone who's this 18-year-old who's never worked at a company before.
mhm,
So I just thought I could like target that. And then I also realized that the number of bachelor's programs in data science are it's exploding.
mhm,
And we've had master's programs for a while, but those are still exploding as well.
mhm,
So there's actually, I think, a need for a book that caters to younger readers that don't necessarily have a lot of technical experience and don't have a lot of industry experience. So that's why I've made it sort of it's not non-technical, but it's intentionally not going very deep in any technical subject because the whole idea is to do the big picture, like
mhm,
everything that you really need to know to understand how to do data science. And that is everything from understanding what data really is to a little bit of statistics to bigger issues like cybersecurity and scalability and just all those things that matter. And there's a big focus on understanding that like it takes a lot of things to do good data science. You can do junk data science on almost anything, but the you have to have good data, you have to prepare it well. All those things I want people to really understand that because I think in a lot of educational programs, understandably, when they're teaching like machine learning, they're teaching the algorithms. They don't want you to spend 80% of your class prepping the data.
mhm,
But in the real world, that's what you would have to do. And so a lot of people get out of these programs, they come and work and they don't understand that the data isn't nice and clean for them. And so I think, this is supposed to kind of give that picture. And I imagine it not necessarily being used as an only textbook in any class. I imagine it as something that would be good for students to buy like first semester. They read some of the chapters for different classes, but they also have it as a reference for even future or anything. There's stuff in it about how to improve your skills outside of a you know educational program, um, like networking, learning, other learning opportunities, and also a whole chapter on sort of how to get into the career.
mhm,
So it's supposed to just be like a generally useful, but I also realized and considered this as I was writing, it would also be useful for career changers, even for managers who want to understand their data scientists better if they don't already have that. Because it doesn't go too deep. And if it's ever getting too deep into a subject, you can kind of skip to the next section and it should be fine. So that was kind
yeah.
of like the way I envisioned it.
Nice. Nice. I mean, and it is a lot. It's like 900 pages, which when I saw that, I was like, holy cow.
It doesn't look very friendly at that thing, but
But it makes sense. There's a lot that goes into this field. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's about breadth, and there's a
yeah.
lot. I mean, there's a lot. And so yeah, and I didn't even I talked about NLP and speech, but I didn't even talk about like image processing or video. I
Yeah.
just this is not usually done as much by data scientists. So
Hmm. Yeah. So the subtitle of your book is Everything You Should Know About the Hottest Field in Tech. So in your opinion, what's one thing that you think people should know about data science, but they usually don't know?
people just cannot grasp the maxim garbage in, garbage out. It is the literal truth. It is one of the most important things to understand about data science, and nobody gets it. But there's also a corollary, which is your data is probably garbage.
Mhm.
Not to be rude, but people just don't get it. And, they've been using data to do certain things for a while, and then data science get in there and look at it, and it's not really usable for data science because of various problems. So that is the one thing. And that's like if a manager read this book, I think I
Mm.
drive that point home. So hopefully they
Yeah.
would get that. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's important for like the teams you work with as a data scientist to like have them understand like if we don't have good usable data, I can't give you good usable insights. And I think another thing that I think was surprising is sometimes you have your hand in data collection depending on like the team you're on. As a data scientist, you might be the one talking to your data engineers or talking to whatever operations team about how are we even collecting our data and how are we, aggregating it and storing it and transforming it into pipelines, et cetera. You might even be writing some of those queries that become a pipeline. And I think a lot of data scientists like have no idea that as the primary consumer of data, sometimes you have to almost be like if your company doesn't have a data product manager, you kind of sometimes become that, or at least
Yeah.
like an advisor. And I think a lot of people probably don't think about that. They're just thinking about what they want to do with the data and not even thinking about how did it get here. And sometimes you have to be the one to figure that out. And you're probably not even like equipped or trained in how
Yeah.
to do that when like
Yeah,
the
it is.
first
It's a
time I was
different
asked.
skill. Like data,
Yeah,
data modeling, I guess,
yeah,
it's a skill. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. They're like, does this pipeline look good? I was like, what? I'm what? Sure. I don't, what am I looking for? I don't, oh God. And then you're like, why is the data quality so bad? Um, yeah. All right. Okay. So moving on to like data science in the real world. So you've worked in quite a range of industries. Are there lessons you've learned in one industry that like surprisingly applied to a different industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think the data quality is obviously a core one. It doesn't matter what field you're in. And some are easier. Some type of data is more prone to different types of mistakes. Obviously, like one of the ones I was working on, it was data collected from running servers. So it was just raw
Hmm.
numbers, unlikely to be very wrong also. But when you're working with data about people or that comes from people's activity in any way, it's just full of it. And like, is this field a free form text field? And if so, you probably won't be able to use it very consistently. And but so it's kind of like you were talking about, like kind of when the data scientist informs data collection. Sometimes you can influence that and go back and have controls put on data
Mhm.
entry even. And so like thinking about those things is really important. I guess also the one of the things I learned that has also kind of been true across the board is the dependence on Excel and people are, it's almost like a crutch. Like some people almost can't think about data unless they see it in a matrix format.
Mhm.
And so you can't ignore that. That's not something wrong with them. This is just the way they've been working.
Mhm.
And I mean, the other thing I think that people often, a lot of data scientists don't do is they don't respect the people they're doing the work for. They
Mhm.
think they're doing things wrong. And I don't think you should think of it that way. They're doing things the best they can.
Mhm.
They've found workarounds for limitations that they're facing, and they're always under pressure. They have to produce. They can't just not produce because this field is difficult to work with, they still have to produce. And so I think that respecting the people you're working with, your stakeholders, is so important. And
Mhm.
also just it's easy to not do because you look at, well, this is really sloppy that they did this, but
Mhm.
how else were they supposed to do it? They didn't
Mhm.
have the tools that we have. And so I think those
Yeah.
are things you see across industry.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. That's so true. I think the more you can like understand the world of your business partners and like build empathy for like what they're trying to do and the problems they're trying to solve. And I've been working on this conference presentation around like public relations tips for data teams because I started my career in public relations and I feel like a lot of data teams could use help with their internal PR. And one of my main ideas is like you as the data scientist or data analyst, like think of your business partner, your stakeholder as like the hero. Like, yes, you're doing all the data analysis, but you're trying to like make them the hero because they're the ones that are then taking your insights and presenting them. And so it just kind of gets back to like the empathy and like,
Yeah.
understanding them and having respect for them. That's so important.
I also
Um,
think that's why AI can't replace us, all of
it's very
us,
true.
because it will never be good at that.
Yeah. Although I was just like prompting AI earlier and I realized how many times I put like please
I
in
know, me too.
prompts. Like, please do this. And I'm like, I'm not talking to a person. What am I doing? But I'm like, that's how I would talk to a person.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, so given the breadth of your career, what advice do you have for someone who's trying to figure out like their career path? They want to work in data science and there's, many different routes people can take. And so if they're brand new, like what would you say to
Yeah.
them to help them figure that out?
So the most important thing is to do some of the actual work. Get your hands dirty. Go
Mhm.
on Kaggle. You can even do Titanic, which everybody and their, little sister has done. So get your hands dirty. That's good. That will teach you whether you actually like programming. I mean, maybe
Mhm.
you should, I mean, in my chapter, because data science jobs are getting harder and harder to find, you might consider other roles, like even product owner, like technical product
Mhm.
owner, or other fields that require technical expertise. And maybe you do just want to be a programmer, but you want to work in the data science space. So that's all good information to have. But I also think that it's kind of like what we talked about at the very beginning of looking at your skill set. Is there a domain you already have a lot of knowledge in, or that you have a strong interest in? You could develop that and make yourself more competitive for jobs in that
Mhm.
field. And so, I think even if you don't have anything that sounds particularly interesting, do a little research on jobs boards and see who's hiring and for what. And you can always go develop those skills to a degree. Because I think right now going in at entry level is incredibly difficult. I mean, I really think it's, unless there's something that makes you stand out, and
Mhm.
having a strong portfolio can do that. But that can only happen if you get in there and work with actual data.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I do think studying the jobs board, people
Mhm.
often forget that. That tells you so much about what
Yes.
people are looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, sometimes people will say like, what do I need to learn to get a job in this field? I'm like, have you looked at job descriptions? Like they literally tell you. I don't know if you realize that. Um, and okay, so kind of similar in your book, you talked to a lot of data practitioners and did these little like interviews in between each chapter, which I loved. Is there someone who had like a really unexpected or surprising career path? Like, what do you think was the most interesting one?
Um, Actually talked to a couple of physicists. They both had PhDs in physics, had been in academia for a little bit. Um, and now they're, real data scientists. But actually, that's not that interesting because there are a lot of data scientists came from physics.
Yeah.
Actually, I find that particular fact interesting, but
Hmm.
it's not that uncommon. One of the people actually I interviewed was in biology. He was like an expert in facial expressions of non-human primates. And he got a job at Discover when he decided to go into, he was an academic, but he decided to go into industry.
Hmm.
And the first thing he did, it's in the book, was a study of mentoring like sessions between staff on a team that had kind of high turnover. And he was able to like figure out the difference between the people who were good mentors and not so good based on body language. And I mean, but he also was capable of analyzing that data. So that was a unique combination of
Hmm.
two different skills that most people don't have. So I think that was probably one of the most interesting stories. Although everyone in the book was interesting, honestly, I had so much fun doing those, and I learned a lot, just sort of about the way people see things. And also, a lot of the people in there are not going to be doing the same kind of trajectory that people reading the book might, because
Yeah,
we didn't have bachelor's programs in data science.
right.
A lot of us didn't even have masters really available when we started. So, of course, we came from different fields, but that doesn't mean that it's not interesting to look at those paths and see what did they pick up on the different parts of the journey. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess that's my next question is in like, what were the patterns you saw in the people you interviewed and the similarities?
one of them was the state of the data and people not understanding that when they go in.
Hmm.
Um, and because we would get interns at different jobs I've had, and they would always really struggle with that. But also, people really emphasize the importance of soft skills, and that is
Hmm.
something that a lot of students of data science don't want to acknowledge or develop. And I mean I talk about it a lot in the book, but it came up over and over. Like, I didn't prompt people for it. They just kept coming up over and over. And I mean, there are data science jobs that are very in the weeds and you're not interacting with customers very often. But most data science jobs require working with a variety of people with different levels of technical expertise. So
Hmm.
but they're also important for working with each other.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we talked a lot about like communication and like the
Yeah.
importance of that, which I mean, I have a degree in communication, so I'm gonna always like talk about that. But
Everybody mentioned it. So
yeah, no. And I even like just with my own limited experience of interviewing like students for internships, like the ones who stood out and like made it to the final round and got offers, they all had like something about them beyond their curriculum that gave them some kind of soft skills. Like they led a student organization, they had a customer service job, they were like even a teaching assistant. And like that, those were the things that like stood out and, and it probably helped them perform better in interviews. And so I always tell students, like, do something besides just go to class, like
yeah.
literally anything. Yeah, all right. I'm gonna skip around in the questions. I'm gonna so I noticed, I was looking through your LinkedIn profile on you've had a lot of jobs, but you also have a lot of degrees, which I love. And I counted, so you have three certificates, two bachelor's degrees, three master's degrees, and now you're working on a doctor of technology at Purdue. How has this broad academic background shaped how you think and work and how you teach?
Yeah, I definitely, for one of the reasons I do so many degrees is because I love structured learning. I'm good with deadlines. Somebody else is making the deadlines. I enjoy that. I find that really satisfying, completing an assignment. But I do think that it also does sort of like give different perspectives. And I've definitely found in working that my writing experience, which I did, one of the degrees is in writing, has
Mhm.
actually helped me become like better at managing my work,
Mhm.
because the idea of working on something huge that you just have to do a little bit at a time, but that it does get you there,
Mhm.
that's really helped a lot. But also, I just think like having different perspectives on things is always useful. I can't think of anything really specific, but I in my classes and that I'm taking now, I always have points to make that other people didn't think of because I have some perspective. And that's not just me. I mean, like everybody does, which is why discussion boards are kind of interesting at this level, more so than like in undergrad classes. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious. Tell me more about your current program. I don't think I know anyone that's done a doctor of
Yeah,
technology.
it's really cool. Um, and it's mostly targeting people who want to go into leadership positions, like end up in the C-suite, things like that.
Okay.
So a lot of I mean, you might even like looking into it. It's
Yeah.
really good. The most of the classes are good, but most of them relate to leadership or managing in some way. But you are able to do other topics, and they do have other things. So my focus is I'm trying to make myself an expert in tech ethics,
Hmm.
so I can kind of move and become a freelancer, basically writing about tech ethics.
Hmm.
My dissertation topic is going to be on how people deal with AI hallucinations.
Hmm.
So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, if they even realize that that's what's happening.
Exactly, that's part of it. Do they
Yeah.
detect them?
Yeah. No, I think ethics is so important in like tech and data science. And I'll be honest, I did a master's in data science and I was disappointed at how little they touched on ethics because I think it's an important part of our work and I think anyone building technology. So what do you think the tech industry and maybe specifically data science needs to do better from an ethical standpoint?
Well, for one thing, I think we just need to be aware that there are issues that matter and we need to think about it. What are we
Mhm.
doing that could impact people? It's mostly about impacting people. I mean, there's like environmental things and animals, but most of the work we're doing is about how we negatively hurt people. And so I think that some of the problem is that people who are in data science are often in a position of privilege. They're men, they're usually white or otherwise privileged in some way in their world. And they need to develop empathy. They need to understand that their view of things is not the
Mhm.
only experience people have. People have different experiences. And I think if we can do that with illustrations and examples, then that's the most important thing. So that's why I did try to infuse that in the book. And a lot of my examples are relate to bias in some way because I
Mhm.
think that's so important.
Yeah. So circling back to the book, when you were writing it, who did you imagine reading the book? I think you've touched on it a little bit, but did you like
Yeah.
have people
Well,
in
so
mind?
originally I was thinking older teenagers, and I
Mhm.
kind of stuck with that, but I started to kind of spread it a little bit, thinking of undergrad students. But I didn't want to make it inaccessible to teenagers,
Mm,
like high schoolers that want to read it. But I
yeah,
also didn't want to make it like talking down to them because that's annoying. And sometimes people who write for kids,
yeah.
I don't like that. So, so then I was able to think about other people, like, for example, the managers I mentioned who might also get something out of it. So I just kind of had those people in mind and was trying to keep it at that level. And it was really difficult at first. I mean, the first few chapters I rewrote several times, like
Hmm.
several.
Yeah.
And then, before I kind of found my voice and sort of like the level I was really going for.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I did a presentation over the summer to like a conference that was aimed at girls in high school and like talking about tech careers. And so I was basically asked to give a presentation about data science. And I was like, how do I talk to high school kids about data science? And I was
Yeah.
trying to look for like examples, and you either get the stuff that's like, yeah, aimed at kids and like really simple, or the more complex stuff. And so I kind of had to, honestly, I use ChatGPT a lot. I'm like, I'm a high
Yeah.
school student, how would I understand
Yeah.
linear regression?
It's really good. And I mean, like, my book is also can be in libraries and could be not something you
Hmm.
necessarily buy, but you can go read some of the chapters and so I think it's a good thing for people who are interested in the field to kind of like look at things at that level. But also, I think you're right, ChatGPT can be really useful.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's good. It's a good, like if you have like writer's block to get you
Yeah.
started, I think. And, certainly then I like did a ton of editing and all that. But yeah, I'm like, what do I even do? Where do I start? Um, so what do you, when someone finishes your book, what do you hope they'll do next?
Um, I mean, I hope that they will, go in, start working on problems in Kaggle or their own problems or whatever, just, really start trying to do it. Depending on where they're at, if they're trying to like if they're in a career, if they're looking for a career, maybe they start applying some of the tips from the job search chapter and, things like that. Um, and hopefully they tell people about how great it is.
Yeah. Cool. So I know you are an author of many genres, not just data science. Do you have plans for another book, either something nonfiction or another novel?
Actually, I have a book out today, which is Halloween.
Wow.
It's
Congratulations.
it's a young adult fiction, but I also have an idea for writing about cognitive bias in
Oh,
professions, but that requires a lot of research. So I want to do it, but I need to do it properly. So I need to do a lot of research. So that's sort of my next nonfiction project in my head. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was such a great chat. Thank you for joining me. And if anyone would like to learn more, you can get a copy of A Friendly Guide to Data Science from a press, if I'm saying that right, or visit Kelly's website at kellypvincent.tech. Otherwise, yeah, thanks so much.
yeah, thank you.